Okay, so we're live. All right. Hey, Bruce, thanks for showing up so early. Bruce is saying he's sharing this out. Bruce is saying, I am working on a big stream video, listening in. Wow, Jason, your yard was a heck of a view with those mountains. Yeah, plenty of space. Got to do it again. I think we had too much fun and we didn't do enough work. Jason, funny you mentioned Mount Sinai. I am not kidding. They want to relocate Gaza people to Mount Sinai region yesterday. Well, see, this is what's really interesting is that there's a literal location that is acknowledged as Mount Sinai, but that is on the continent of Africa, where it's very clear that Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia. If you just follow, that's one of the things with the Bible. It says they went here and then they went there and then they went over here. So you can really just follow and you can find a passageway. And the people that did find Mount Sinai, um, independent, just independent people doing it on their own because academia wants nothing to do with finding the real Mount Sinai. So these are independent people that had snuck into Saudi Arabia while it was closed to outside people. So it was a pretty dangerous endeavor. So pictures were getting out, over the last 20 years. But there was no way. They're just like, oh, here's a random image. It says the real Mount Sinai. You try and get some information, who took these pictures. So you got to take it with a grain of salt, but it's definitely was something that stuck in my mind. And then I fell on Joel Richardson, who is, an academic, big on end time eschatology timelines and things like that I have a lot of respect for. And I think he's quite right with end time eschatology in relation to the nations surrounding. He takes a Islamic, possible biblical interpretation that this will come out of an Islamic nation, the Antichrist leader. The majority of Christians think it'll be a revived Roman Empire. And I think when I saw Joel Richardson, and I've done responses, I've done a video showing his work that thoroughly convinced me from his perspective of the Antichrist, which is not a majority view, but still, I think it's funny because, look, the Bible is a big book to digest. And somebody is a student of the Bible for the rest of their life because you'll never have in one lifetime an ability to, digest, to really digest the whole thing. It just goes infinitely, deeper and deeper and deeper. Doing videos, because I saw some images and saying, this is the real place here. This is real, it's kind of like, Google scholarship here. But he does have credentials, and he is respected within the Christian community, and has a very large ministry to the Middle East as well. So he's in a dangerous location too for where he tries to minister as well. Anyways, blah blah blah. Let's just get into the first thing I want to show you. So, anyways, all that started out by saying this will be based on Joel Richardson, pictures, images of the real Mount Sinai that he went to visit, his story, his explanation of what he saw, and the images are there. The rock that Moses struck in the desert, where water, came out of this rock in the desert to give, water to all the Israelites while they're in the desert. That is located. And not only is it, oh, what a coincidence. This is here. This is here. They're not like stretching like way over there. They found something here. It's, if you read the story of the Bible, this happens, the rock of Horeb. Okay. All of these things that we can go through, and Joel does it way better than me. He goes through these things, and you can just go like, wow, the Bible said it here. Look, it's right there. Okay, the Bible, notice it says that. Check that there. And it's always in retrospect. Once you see it, you kind of cannot unsee it. So when I find cool stuff like that, I'll share it with you guys. So I want to share screen. Sorry, guys. Okay. All right. So if you go to my channel, go to my playlist. So YouTube channel. Go to the channel, go to the playlist. And under my playlist, you'll see Bible Archeology.
Served in water.
So I've already done the first two were on the archaeological site of Sodom and Gomorrah with, the city, the outline of a city that is turned to ashes. You can see here, this archaeologist is burning the sulfur to show that there's balls of sulfur within the ashes of this city that's in the proper area. It's exactly where, Sodom would be if, again, we're following the literal areas. We're following the Old Testament, and it's saying, here, this location, seek it out. You find a city of ashes, you find full of balls of 99% pure sulfur. I don't know. That, is a very interesting find. Here you have the real Noah's Ark found. You can go over here. In Popular Mechanics, they're talking about it, and it's a recent article. This isn't like old. Okay, it's published November 1st, 2023. All right, so this is very recent. It's in Turkey. It's not on the mountain of Ararat. It's on the mountains of Ararat, exactly like the Bible says. We often just focus on the mountain of Ararat, but it's the mountains. And you find it. If I go over here, and I've already done a video on it. This is an aerial view of the location. So archaeologists are still examining it, but Ron Wyatt, a Seventh-day Adventist, I believe he's Seventh-day Adventist, he had done research on this for like a long time back. I think he died now. And of course, because he's not, academic, he's an independent researcher, especially the fact that, he's Seventh-day Adventist. You can't trust anything he's going to say. Well, he might have some bad theology, but some good archaeology there. So this area is getting recognition as well. So there's a lot of reasons to believe that, this is not Old Testament fairy tale guys. These are actual historical things that happened in the past that were documented in the Jewish scriptures, and we're able to find evidence of it now. And one of the other problems, unfortunately, with the situation is that all of these archaeological areas are under Islamic state rule. So the geographical locations of these areas are in Islamic nations. So they don't, why would they be like, the Old Testament and the Jews and Mount Sinai and God, making the Jews the chosen people and stuff. Well, it's exactly like they're saying, look, it's over there. That's what the Bible says here. That's not good for them. That is not good for them. And it's weird because like you're driving in Saudi Arabia, and then it's like, it's like Noah. Oh, there's Noah's Ark. Oh, there's Moses's mountain. Oh, there. It's like, to them, they're just like, that's the mountain there, of Moses over here. It's like, just like, yeah, of course it's over there. It's just across the corner. Everyone knows that. Yeah, there's no tourism or anything in this area. In 2018, Saudi Arabia, uh, I don't know if it's changed, started to allow Christians to become tourists and go and visit these locations. 2018, has not been a long time at all. So again, thanks Bruce for showing up. Thanks Darla for showing up as well. And give me a second. I just pressed something wrong. Now I can't find my StreamYard. Give me a second. Sorry, guys. It's been a while. I'm getting rusty. I'm rusty doing these live streams. All right, so I lost the tab for it, but I'll be able to find it again. Forgive me. Here we go. I'm letting myself back into the studio. Very. Oh no. Give me one sec. Now there's an echo. Sorry, give me a sec. I lost my StreamYard tab, so I just popped another one. Now I have two Jasons. All right, I'm back. Such a weird situation. The tab was completely messed up and stuff like that. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we're back online. I'm gonna shut up then. I have to pop up. I have to find all the stuff that I just lost, having to close everything. Won't be too long. Just gonna go and say hi to Matt. Howdy, folks. Hey, Matt. Thanks for being here. Um, Tencent just got up. Yeah. Well, we haven't gotten much happening yet. I've been like rambling in circles. I should have just gotten to the point of the video. Jackie McDonald. Hey, Jackie. Thanks for showing up. All right. Let me go find Joel Richardson now. Sinai. Okay. Real Mount Sinai. I just want to. All right. So since technically we've only been doing daily breads on the New Testament, we're at 1 Corinthians. We haven't done any Bible studies on the Old Testament. So technically, I'm not going to assume that every single person following has done a lot of Old Testament studies. So before we get into Mount Sinai, there's some stuff maybe that is important to know. So what's the significance of Mount Horeb in the Bible? Mount Horeb in the Bible, it's just another name for Mount Sinai. The mountain where the Hebrew people entered into a covenant with God after escaping from bondage in Egypt. Mount Horeb is also the place where Moses received the 10 Commandments and the laws, rules, the instructions for people before continuing on their journey through the desert towards the promised land. The mountain of God is another name for Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai. Horeb comes from the Hebrew term meaning desert. Most of the events that the book of Exodus describes as having happened on Mount Sinai are located at Mount Horeb in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy uses the name Horeb exclusively for the mountain of God, except in one verse. However, this mention of Sinai could refer to the wilderness of Sinai rather than the mountain. Before the Exodus, while Moses was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro. So please remember Jethro, okay? Because the location of Jethro's house, they're like, yeah, that's Jethro's house over here. And you see, again, the ruins of a location that in Saudi Arabia, they're like, that was Jethro's house. Okay, so that's quite impressive. So before the Exodus, while Moses was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro, because Joel Richardson will talk about Jethro's house, he came one day to the slopes of Mount Horeb. There he caught sight of a bush that was on fire, but not burned up. As Moses investigated the phenomenon, God spoke to him from the flames, the burning bush, remember, calling him by name. The Lord told Moses to go to Pharaoh and deliver the people of Israel out of slavery in Egypt. After the Exodus, as the people wandered the desert, they suffered from thirst and they began to complain to Moses about having no water. The Lord commanded Moses to strike the rock at Horeb to obtain water to drink. Okay, so there's the mountain of Horeb, but there is the rock. Okay, so I mean, you're in a desert, bunch of mountains and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of rocks. So Is this rock special? Does it stand out at all? We'll see as we look at Joel Richardson. In Exodus 19 to 20, the Israelites camped at the base of Mount Horeb while Moses went up the mountain to receive instructions from God. The people were told that from the mountain they would receive the commandments of God and even hear the Lord's voice. After 3 days of preparation, God would come down in the sight of the people. Moses set boundaries on where they would go, and under penalty of death, through stoning or shooting of arrow, they were prohibited from even touching the mountain. On the third day, amid thunder, lightning, and trumpet blasts, a thick cloud of smoke engulfed the mountain of God and descended on it. The mountain of God, right? Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai. Then Moses brought down the 10 commandments and all the instructions of the law. The book of Deuteronomy reiterates that on Mount Horeb, God made a covenant with the people of Israel and handed down the 10 commandments. Also, while encamped at Mount Horeb, the people made a golden altar in the shape of a calf to worship, provoking God's wrath. So Joel goes into more detail about that. We have paintings, showing things like this occurring. We have the remains of the golden calf altar. We have the remains of the altar that's near a river at the bottom of the mountain. Like, you have this fairy tale story in the Old Testament about Mount Sinai, yet Joel's sitting here and going, oh, what a coincidence. It must be just a coincidence. There it is archaeologically. Oh, look, over here it says that. Funny. What a coincidence. Here it is. What a coincidence. Coincidence, right? From Mount Horeb, the Israelites set out towards Kadesh on an 11-day journey. Much later, the prophet Elijah fled to Mount Horeb because of Jezebel's wrath. There, he stayed in a cave and had an extraordinary encounter with God. What do you say it with me? Coincidence that there is a cave where you would think it should be if you're taking all of this literally. So I think that's a good enough kind of like background on it. The Mount of Horeb here. Let's go to some images here. Now you go. The rock. And here it is. Look at the size of this. Look at the person. And, pictures, the depth and perspective and stuff like that, sometimes that doesn't do it justice. But when you see a tiny little person sitting right, standing up, this would be the size of a person right here, standing up beside that. Okay. He struck the rock and it split through, and out from it came gushing water. And Joel has a beautiful close-up coming out of here. You can see the water erosion. Okay, it's very clear that the rocks are rounded, that large amounts of water for an extended period of time were gushing out of there. All exactly where it should show up if this is real. Let's start. So Joel Richardson, discovering the real Mount Sinai. He was there. He's talking about his trip there. He has his images, and he's he really knows his Bible. So I've learned a lot over the years from Joel Richardson, especially end-time eschatology. Let's get into it now. I'm going to make it go a little faster so we get through this. I will have to, unfortunately, he's way more interesting than me, but I'll have to stop occasionally, say something just so it's fair use, that I'm not just, playing this guy's work, that we're doing little comments here and there.
A fun message. If you saw the little preview message I sent, this is fun because it's faith inspiring. It's not politics. It's not COVID. It's not pandemic. It's not, not that stuff's not important, but sometimes it's nice to take a break. And there's a lot of pictures. Okay, so that's always helpful. So let me just begin by saying, one, it's a blessing to be here. It's good to be back. I'm in Kansas City, so just a quick shot down the incredibly beautiful I-70 corridor. It is good to be here. So let me just begin by saying this. For most Christians, okay, most modern Christians, not everyone, but for most modern Christians, we look at the Bible, I tend to view things in sort of pictorial form, but the story of redemption that God has been telling throughout the pages of this book, we look at the story of redemption. It begins with creation. If we're viewing it like a mountain ridge, it begins with just this towering giant mountain. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, for most Christians, we kind of go, and then it just starts ramping up from there, and it builds and it builds and it builds, and then it gets to the New Testament. And we spend most of our time in the New Testament, right? We're mostly reading about Jesus. And so we would kind of view it to where then all of a sudden you get to this big peak, the incarnation. God became flesh. He dwelt amongst us. He got in our face. But then beyond that, we're waiting for the even bigger mountain, which is his return, the resurrection of the dead, the end of all of this nonsense, the nonsense of this age, the chaos, the insanity of this wicked current system, and the establishment of his kingdom. And so that's generally the way. You've got creation. The Old Testament just kind of ramps up and it leads to Jesus.
All right. Sorry, Bruce. Just want to make it sure that the Real Mount Sinai, I showed you, this is the Real Mount Sinai. Okay. And this one's in Saudi Arabia. Poop. Okay, it's good enough. This one. And you can see it actually goes up here, and then it goes down behind this ridge here. And you can see the coloration of it on the top. All of a sudden, it's all black and charred. Exactly like you would expect. The pillar of smoke and fire. Fire during the night, the pillar of smoke during the day. Just fire just rumbling on top of that during the whole Mount Sinai event. So this is what I'm claiming, Bruce, to be the real Mount Sinai. Okay, it's this one here, and he's going to show that one.
From the perspective of Jesus himself, from the perspective of a first century Jew who was thoroughly biblically literate, who grew up on the Old Testament, that's their Bible, as well as the apostles, the way they would view the story of redemption is, yes, you have this towering, looming mountain at the beginning, that's creation. But then you have this other towering mountain, which in a weird way is almost even bigger than creation itself, which is the story of the Exodus, which culminates with the events that took place at Mount Sinai. Again, some of us are a little bit more, got our fingers into the Old Testament than others, but for the most part, we kind of look, like David and Goliath, you've got the story of Samson and Delilah, there's Moses and the Exodus, like just one in a series of equal Old Testament stories. That's not how the prophets viewed it. It's not how the apostles viewed it. That's not how Jesus viewed it. When you read the words that the Lord used when he led them, this momentous, this incredible series of events as God leads Israel out of Egypt, he ripped the ocean in half. Okay, that, again, I've been a charismatic for a long time. I've never seen the ocean get ripped. I've seen some weird stuff, some crazy stuff, some awesome stuff, but I've never seen the stuff that happened during the Exodus. And as crazy as that was, parting the Red Sea, and then he gets to the other side, he brings forth water from the rock, like some really amazing miracles. What happened at the mountain itself, the culmination of the Exodus, God himself came down before the people in blazing fire on the mountain, in thick storm clouds, flashes and peals of lightning and thunder, with the blasting of trumpets that get increasingly louder and louder until the whole mountain shakes. There's an earthquake, and 1 million or so people are at the base of this mountain begging Moses, please tell God to stop talking. You
stop talking, God. There's also talking about the Red Sea crossing, and that's another one that I'm going to do eventually. There's these coral reefs. First of all, you see here, there are these pylons, okay, on one side of the Red Sea and on the other. Okay, here's on what side? The side that is in Saudi Arabia. What do you think? They chopped it down because it gives evidence that the Jews, their enemy, their sworn spiritual enemy, you know, their enemy above and below here on earth, it gives validity again to the Jews as God's people. So that's not gonna happen. So if you have here, okay, and then on the other side there's a pylon. So what they did is they went scuba diving and they saw coral reefs that you can see over here, coral reefs, okay, like this, and they're in the shape of chariot wheels. So there's a lot of things under here at the sea crossing that also gives archaeological evidence as well. And you can see that at the area that the crossing happened, that it literally goes a very gradual decline, goes across, and then a very gradual incline that would allow, if there was enough of the, I believe it was the wind, it was a strong wind that pushed the waters enough to, I believe, for them to go through. I'd have to go back and read, so take that with a grain of salt. But there is also evidence that there was a crossing and that there are evidence of chariot wheels and stuff like that. Who knows if it was properly excavated and not just independent people taking it upon themselves to try and play to Indiana Jones. So just not part of the Real Mount Sinai topic here, but definitely interesting finds under where you would expect. But Lord knows Christians should not know about this stuff because it gives validity to their stupid fairy tales.
Can't bear that. Like, that's just not something that normally happens. That's not your average church service, right? Like, yeah, well, praise God. But I was joking. I go like, Lord, if you would just really speak to me, like if you would just show me an angel, then I would never sin again, kind of thing. But they sinned again, like despite what happened. But the point is, this is unprecedented in human history. So then when you look at the prophets, they're just pointing back to Exodus. They're like, guys, remember, don't forget what God did when he led you out with a mighty and outstretched hand, the miracles he did. When you look at the words of God himself with the Passover, the most continuously celebrated holiday, festival, feast in human history, a few thousand years, the Lord goes, do these things, teach these things to your children so that you will not forget. Remember. It's all about, don't forget this. And the reason for what it's worth, it's because the Lord wants us to remember the crazy, awe-inspiring, awesome, amazing, outrageous things that he did back then, and to know they're real, and to know they're historical, and to know he's capable in order that we can believe that all of this other crazy stuff, that he's coming back in the clouds in blazing fire to save us from this current wicked age, that's true.
I see the Christian disease coming over me gradually. The amount of trust and confidence that I had in the scriptures early on is not comparable to the trust and confidence that I have now in my faith. So a lot of the stuff I would probably take a lot less literal initially, spiritualizing things, but gradually and slowly but surely, as I grow in my faith, I start saying, well, yeah, that's ridiculous. I thought that was ridiculous, but wait a minute here. So the more that the Bible over and over slowly starts proving itself to you, the more you start opening up to these more supernatural and extraordinary and, supernatural occurrings and stuff like that. At least for me, it's not a blind faith. It was a certain amount of trust and confidence that I had accumulated to the point that it reached a threshold where in my heart and mind, I was beginning to believe, although still a lot of unknowns, a lot of, a lot of areas, still not investigated. So it wasn't like a believer to non-believer. It was a slow and it's a gradual process of investigation. And you put all that time, effort, because of your love for God, and you're guided by the Holy Spirit. And then over time, hours and hours every day, of, studying what you love, then things, you start actually taking things a lot more literal as the Bible proves itself. That's a story I'm sticking to.
True too. That's ultimately what it's about. He was faithful in the past to deliver his people. He will be faithful. And in fact, as crazy and as awe-inspiring as the events of Sinai were, the Bible frames that as a faint foreshadow of what he will do when he returns. The return of Jesus is way greater and more glorious than what happened on Mount Sinai. And all of the parallels, for what it's worth, God came down in fire, in the clouds, in the thick cloud, with the blasting of trumpets, with a mighty earthquake. He comes back in blazing fire, in the clouds, with the blasting of trumpets, with a mighty earthquake. And all of the imagery, the motifs, and the themes are intended to be understood in the New Testament. Not just the New Testament, but actually throughout the whole Bible. The return of God from heaven to save his people and to execute vengeance against the wicked, to punish the wicked, to save the righteous, those who wait. The righteous are those who wait, those who eagerly await his return. That is intended to be understood as a much greater version of what happened. Okay, now here's the thing. As big, as important as the Exodus and Mount Sinai is, when you look at the field, you look at the world of Exodus scholarship today, people dedicate their lives to study that portion of the Bible, that part of history. The vast majority of scholars, secular and those that even call themselves Christians, usually more on the liberal side of the theological spectrum, they don't even believe that the Exodus ever happened. The conservatives that believe that it happened, that believe the Bible, are a narrow sliver within that world. They're kind of viewed as the kook fringe. Why don't
It is. I remember there was a debate. I'm pretty sure it was Michael Brown, Dr. Michael Brown, Christian academic, and he was debating a rabbinical Jew. And it was the rabbinical Jew that was saying that these stories are valuable for cultural, historical value, meaning the culture of Israel was basically, the culture of Israel revolves around the scriptures and those stories, and that creates that close cultural bond that they have. But that, no, of course, this is not science. This is not academic realities. These are not historical facts. These are not archaeological facts. And so it was like the rabbinical Jew, the modern Jew, that modern day Judaism has nothing to do with the Old Testament Judaism. The Old Testament Judaism revolves around the sacrificial system, the ceremonial laws. They have no temple. Therefore, they can reject their Messiah. Well, they shouldn't, but they have rejected the Messiah. But now they don't even have the temple to atone for their sins. So they've just become a do good works, apologize when you make a mistake kind of thing. There's nothing Jewish about it. None of the laws apply to them anymore. So why don't you just tell people, just be a good person, and that's your religion. That's all it is.
Don't they believe it happened? Well, I mean, it's pretty important that it did happen, because the rest of this book is riding on that having happened, right? And it's the foundation of God's testimony to mankind.
Could you let me know in the chat, is this too fast? 1.5? Let me know if this is too fast. I'll slow it down, but ideally 1.5 will let us get through this a lot quicker.
The reason they don't believe it happened is because there's no evidence for it. And that's valid. That's the scientific approach. They go, we can't find, like, if 1 million some odd people came out of it, we should have some clear evidence. They can't find the real Mount Sinai. And so they go, we don't believe it happened. But here's the crazy thing. And here's the easy answer. They've been looking in the wrong place. They've been looking and so therefore there's no evidence. That makes sense. Here's a map. Americans need maps. We need maps.
This is crazy.
We're in St. Louis. That's in the middle of the country. I'm just kidding. When we were in Iraq, they did a poll and asked Americans where Iraq.
Yeah. See, this is right. Sinai Peninsula. This is where the traditional site is. So they cross the sea, and then they get over here. But for some reason, Mount Sinai's on this side. So they cross the Red Sea, and then they go to Mount Sinai. But here it's like the traditional Mount Sinai That's another story of who decided that it's going to be there. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. It was the mother of some Roman emperor. I might be wrong. Something about that. It was like when the Roman emperor's mother says that that's the Mount Sinai, just everybody, let's agree. So this is where it currently, to this day, still is called Mount Sinai. It's here. But over in Saudi Arabia, Jabal al-Lawz, okay, in close to Midian. It's over here. So they came and they crossed close to this area right here. You see this little blip here? This is like a large area where all of the Jews could have gathered on the beachfront here, and they crossed over. And then shortly after crossing, this is where all of the majority of the rest of the stuff that you're going to hear Joel talk about, all of the Exodus, Sinai, adventure stuff is happening in this area.
Was 85% of Americans had no idea where Iraq was, and they said, "Here's a map of the world. I want you to put a dot where you think Iraq is." And I looked at the map. People put dots in the United States itself. There was a dot on Hawaii. Yeah, my poor son, he's over there in Iraq, out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. You know, I was like, "Are you serious?" And we're infamous throughout the world for just being like so ignorant. But anyway, that's a side point. My people, my people. Okay, so here is a map of the pizza shaped. So Americans can relate to that. It looks like a piece of pizza. That's the Sinai Peninsula. And it's named that because down there at the bottom, I've got a little black triangle, the traditional site. That's where traditional scholarship says the real Mount Sinai is. And here's the thing about the traditional site. No one believed it was the real Mount Sinai until the 4th century, about 400 years after Jesus, 400 plus years after Jesus. So what happened, this is a brief history, is you had some Egyptian monks. This is funny, back in like the 3rd century, they were tired of the corruption of modern society. They said, we need to get out of it. This thing's going down fast. And they fled out into the desert. And you're like, you guys thought it was going down fast. You haven't even seen TikTok yet, you know, or whatever. And so they fled out into the desert to start a monastic prayer movement. That's the beginning of the Desert Fathers, Anthony, and all that. And they just developed this idea that this is the real Mount Sinai because it was the tallest mountain in the area down there. And what happened is they kept getting killed by these marauding Bedouins. And so then one of the Roman emperors came because they kept getting killed. And after about 100 years, he built a fortress, literally a fortress, 50-foot walls. And that's called St. Catherine's Monastery. And he named it St. Catherine's Monastery of the God-trodden mountain, the mountain where God walked. And so ever since then, the church, of course, once Rome put its stamp of approval on this thing, the whole church just said that's the real Mount Sinai. But there was no tradition before the 4th century that says so. There's no archaeological, there's nothing. It's just a mountain. On the other hand, on the other side of this body of water, on the right side of the piece of pizza, that is called the Gulf of Aqaba, or the Red Sea, all of the water there that you see down below is part of the Red Sea. But we call that the Gulf of Aqaba. On the other side is a black triangle and a mountain called Jebel, that just means mountain in Arabic, Al-Lawz, or Al-Luz, which means the mountain of almonds. Okay, and this is in the northwest corner of the modern kingdom of Saudi Arabia. If you drew a straight line off the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba and just went east, that's the border between, to the north is Jordan, the kingdom of Jordan, and the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And then to the north of that is Israel. You can see the Dead Sea up there, that little body of water. Okay, so that's Israel. So we're going to look at this other mountain. Now, here's what's super cool about this is how many people here just curiously went to Israel with Wes and I a few years ago? Is there anybody here that was on the Israel tour? Almost no one. One? Hey. Yeah. I made fun of you guys in the first service, by the way. You guys are the slackers that show up late. The millennials, the families, and the slackers. But
it's funny, Joel. Like he has like dad jokes. His jokes are rarely funny. It's just really cheesy. You might miss some of his bad jokes because we're going a little faster. But yeah, he's a good. He's good at biblical end-time eschatology, and he is not a good comedian. But it's funny because they're so bad, the jokes.
But I know that's not true. I'm just kidding. I always come to later service. But here's the thing that's super cool about this is you could not get into Saudi Arabia up until October of 2019. It was closed unless you're in the military or you had a special work visa. You work in like, oil industry. Like you can't get in. It was closed off. So what happened is in the 80s, there was this guy named Ron Wyatt. He's kind of this American adventurer. He's not an archaeologist. He's like a nurse anesthetician. I don't know how you, anesthesia, whatever.
He's a nurse anesthetist or a nurse anesthesiologist. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he was like, a real Indiana Jones, and he did his own, he did his own journeys to all of these areas and stuff like that. Ron Wyatt, even to the point of saying that he found the Ark of the Covenant that is underneath Calvary, underneath Golgotha, that underneath there's a chamber where the Ark of the Covenant is hidden. Stuff like that. Who knows? That's for another time. I'm convinced that there is some kind of, there's something that has a large amount of gold that is in a specific location, and this was Ron Wyatt that brought it up initially, and other people have gone with these devices to it'll point to large quantities of gold, and every time they go, it starts pointing to the location where Ron says the Ark of the Covenant is there. Then as you go over it, the two antennas, they start spinning in a circle, and then as you advance past, it points behind you. So you keep on tracking this location, and it's quite possible. I mean, during the between 66 AD and a little bit after 70 AD, there was the conflict between Rome and the Romans and the Jerusalem. So there was the siege of Jerusalem. So things could have been hidden there too. I don't want to get too much off track, but yeah, all of these fairy tale stories have archaeological evidence, in my opinion.
In his teaching, he snuck in across the borders, and he came back and started teaching in the churches, saying, hey, this is the real Mount Sinai. Well, he was a colorful character, maybe known for some sensationalism, this and that, but the scholars just were like, forget about it. Because look, for what it's worth, these guys pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their PhDs, and that's valid. And the last thing they want is some nurse to find the biggest, most significant biblical archaeological site in history. Like, there's going to be some jealousy there. And so they would just mock that idea. But the thing of it is no one could get in to really look at it because it was behind the Islamic, Saudi Arabian Iron Curtain, so to speak. And what's amazing is that everything about this is preserved. It's been protected. It's been forgotten. Guys, this is part of the Lord's sovereign plan. This is all, the fact that there was this distraction grenade, this smoke grenade thrown over here in the Sinai. This is, Rome says this is the traditional site, and everyone forgot this other site. But the first point that I want to begin with is that this other mountain has, and it's the only mountain that has a very ancient Jewish, Christian, and Muslim tradition that says it's the mountain of Moses. It's the only one. Okay, so we begin with a simple fact that in the first century,
really does not take a long time to forget for a generation, okay, or generational knowledge to somehow be severed and then forgotten within that 50 to 80 year span of a generation. It happens a lot. We were not confused on what was adequate nutrition. We knew what were foods that were essential for our health and foods to avoid and stuff like that. And, within a generation and in a generation and a half, I would say, not even full 2 generations, nobody knows. Everyone thinks that plants make you healthy, animal food will kill you, and carbohydrates are healthy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not complicated, but things can get forgotten. Things can just poof in a poof of an instant. All of a sudden, we don't know about that anymore. It's pretty scary.
Roughly the time of Jesus, shortly thereafter, you've got this guy named Claudius Ptolemy. He's a Roman geographer. He's the father of geography, they call him. And he sort of gridded out the whole world and had all these coordinates, and he named all these rivers and mountains and places and toponyms, you name it. Okay, so people have recreated the world according to Ptolemy. It was pretty amazingly accurate. And here's a map that someone made based on his geography. And there it is over in northwest Saudi Arabia to the east of the Gulf of Aqaba. It's a very different map. That's what we're looking at. He had 2 cities. One is called Modian. The other is called Madiam. Subtle variations on the name Midian. Okay, the A at the end on the map is just the Latinization. Modiana, Madiama. It's basically just a subtle variation on Midian. Now, why is that important? Well, first of all, let me just jump forward. When Moses went through this episode of his life, after he killed the Egyptian, and he flees and he goes over to the land of Midian, right? He comes to the well. There's these Midianite girls. These shepherds are harassing them. Moses drives the shepherds off, and then the girls go back to their father. His name is Jethro. Jethro goes, man, why didn't you invite this guy back for dinner? Like he helped you get water. He drove off these shepherds. And so they're like, oh gosh, we didn't think about that. So we go back, they get Moses. Moses ends up marrying Zipporah. And for the next 40 years, Moses lives with his father-in-law in Midian, and he's shepherding his sheep, right? So you see that in Exodus 2. Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh, again, after he killed the Egyptian guy.
So, right, do you remember Jethro? Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro. This was his father-in-law, okay, the priest of Midian. So don't forget Jethro.
He settled He's settled down in the land of Midian. And likewise, Exodus 3 verse 1 says Moses was busy doing what? He goes from being royalty, essentially royalty in Egypt. Now he's shepherding his father-in-law's sheep and goats. And he led the flock to the far side of the desert. The wilderness is the desert. And he came to Horeb. That's another name for Sinai, the mountain of God. Now, here's a map of that area, going back to Claudius Ptolemy's map that has these two cities that are essentially Midian. The reason I believe there's two cities here I've got scoped out. One is called Al-Bid in Arabic. The other is called Magna. It's right on the coast.
See over here, right there. Remember I said that little blip here? That's the sea crossing. I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong. He's gonna let us know if I'm wrong. So it's like a beachfront over here, and then they crossed there, to my knowledge.
Coast. The reason I believe that those are the two cities that Ptolemy was talking about is because when you go there, those are the only two oases. Palm trees, running water, water bubbling up out of the ground, flowing down to the ocean, like pretty significant oases. Magna there right on the coast, and Al-Bid or Al-Bed, it's right on the major Arab caravan route. Okay, so it's on a major highway, right? It's just off of I-70. And then just to the east of that, you can see Jebel Allah. So it's real close to Jebel Allah. Now here's the ancient Jewish tradition. So you got a guy named Philo. He's a Jewish biblical commentator. He was influenced by Greek philosophy. So he's a little mixture. He tried to incorporate Greek philosophy, but he was Jewish. He was not a believer. He didn't believe in Jesus the Messiah, but he lived about the same time as Jesus. And he lived over there in Egypt, in Alexandria. He specifically says in his writings that Mount Sinai is where? He said it's the tallest mountain in the land of Midian. Okay, in the first century, Claudius.
Hey, Bill, I'm trying to not stop the video too much. I really appreciate, Bill Bailey, your comments, in agreement with them. And I don't mind having maybe like once we get through his actual presentation, then I can send the link, and some people, we can, have a bit of a chat on, this kind of topic for, half an hour or so. So stay with us.
Ptolemy said Midian is over there in Saudi Arabia. Modern scholarly consensus places Midian over there on the east side of the Gulf of Aqaba in Saudi Arabia. A Jewish tradition, Philo, in the first century, the same time as Jesus, said the tallest mountain in that area, which is Jebel Allah's, is Mount Sinai. Likewise, Josephus, he's a historian that documented the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. He lives in Jerusalem. So here's two Jews from sort of different parts of the Jewish world who say the same thing. Josephus said, now Moses, when he had obtained the favor of Jethro, that's his father-in-law, he stayed there in Midian, and he fed his flock. Sometime afterward, taking his station at the mountain called Sinai, he drove his flocks there to feed them. This is the highest of all the mountains thereabout. Jebel Allah is about 8,400 feet tall. It's far and away the tallest mountain in that area. Now, again, the question is, as the scriptures say, he led Jethro's sheep and goats from Midian, which again, we know where Midian is, or we have pretty good certainty where Midian was, at least the general area. Again, I think it was Al-Bad. I mean, it makes absolute sense. Where are you going to live? Out in the desert, or where there's an oasis on a major highway? Like, it's been continually inhabited for thousands of years. Does it make sense that Moses took the sheep and the goats, and to give them some food, went on a 600 mile round trip to the traditional site? That doesn't make any sense. And he didn't put them on a boat.
Yeah.
Right? There's no such thing as a goat boat. On the other hand, does it make sense to say that he made like a 15-20 mile round trip to Jebel Allah? That makes sense.
Yeah, makes total sense. Oh, he went here. He went all the way up here, then he went all the way back down there. Or does it make more sense that he went here and then went there?
Scholars will say that other view makes more sense, but this one is stupid. And I go, I am not a learned man, but I'm going to tell you something that I do know, okay? That makes more sense to me, sir. So I think we can all agree with that. That was my Missouri impression. I'm just kidding. I lived in Kansas City for like 30 years. And if you know the layout, the cultural layout, and then school district, this and that, I moved across the border to Kansas. And like 30 seconds after I crossed over, I went, I can't believe anyone would live in Missouri. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. His jokes are horrible.
It's a Missouri-Kansas joke. I'm sure you guys have something similar out here. Okay, so here's the funny thing. Not funny, haha, but funny, ironic. The town Al-Bid. The scholars go, this is ridiculous. There's no reason to believe that Moses was over there. You guys are listening to Ron Wyatt, watching a bunch of YouTube videos. It's so stupid. Like, you Christians are so gullible. You'll believe anything. When you go there, there's a sign before you go into the town of Al-Bad. It's in Arabic and in English. And the locals, for thousands of years, or 1,200 years, they call the town Muga al-Shu'aib. What does that mean in English? Muga means the caves. Al-Shu'aib is the Quranic or the Islamic name for Jethro. The name of the town to the locals, and it has always been, this is Jethro's house.
Remember what I was saying?
They haven't been watching Ron Wyatt YouTube videos, right? Not 100 years ago, at least not, And then just to the side there is the mountain I believe is Mount Sinai. And here's the thing, you can go in the center of town. There's a big fenced in area. It's an archaeological site. Like, you can watch the scholars make fun of it, and then you go there and you're like, they all believe it's Mount Sinai here. Like, the Muslims to this day still believe it. We've all forgotten it, even though the Lord said, don't forget, don't forget. And the Muslims are the ones that remember. And so in the center of town, there's this archaeological site. You buy tickets. There's all of these caves. It looks just like Petra. And they go, this is where Jethro lived. They say that they later were turned into tombs by the Nabatean Arabs. They came around the 1st century. But during the time of Moses, they say this is where Jethro lived. And just right, like up the street, not far, maybe 100, 200 yards, is another big fenced-in area with a well that they call the well of Musa, the well of Moses. Everything that the Bible describes is right there, and it makes sense. So that was cool. And then I stepped out of one of these caves. There's only been a few times in my life, and this is before I got to the mountain. It's only been a few times in my life when my breath just got taken away, like, whoa. And I stepped out and I looked, and it's a picture, it doesn't quite capture it, but that's Mount Sinai that you're looking at, the tall peak. And it struck me as I go, because this is where Moses lived for 40 years before he felt called to go back to Egypt and, the whole let my people go kind of thing. Moses would have stepped out of his house, and for 40 years, he was looking at Mount Sinai, having no idea that the day was going to come when he would meet God and talk to God face to face in the midst of the blazing fire on top of the mountain. And one of the most ridiculous historical, God, him on the, you know what I mean? Like, he just saw that, and the whole thing just struck me, and I went, that's it right there. It was like clear day. Okay, the Lord said to Moses, pass before the people. Okay, so they've gone through the Red Sea. We're going to start looking at the various evidences, the criteria.
It's like just here, Exodus, Moses flees to Midian. Like, we just saw the map, right? With the peninsula, and over here you see Midian, and and it's like we're just reading this, but now you have this image, you have the map, you have where he's walking to and he's going to, and it's just, for me, I find it like how it brings the Old Testament alive. It says, one day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw the Egyptians beating a Hebrew, one of his own people, looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Egyptians fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew? The man said, who are you who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me like you killed the Egyptians? So Moses freaks out and runs and hides. When Pharaoh heard this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, the map we just had up there, where he sat down by what he just said, by a well. Now, a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to Ruel, their father, he asked, why have you returned so early today? But anyways, so for us, we're reading this and stuff, but just step back, and it's like this ancient scripture here that we're reading about. It's like for the people in the Middle East, they're like, yeah, it's down over here. Yeah, it's just over here in the corner. Yeah, the well's there. Have a good day. Off you go. It's pretty crazy. So I think that it's well worth, going through this. I think that it's really cool.
If that's Mount Sinai, what's the evidence? Beyond the fact that there's this ancient Jewish tradition that says it's the Mount Sinai, is there any evidence? They cross the Red Sea, and then they're thirsty. Again, I don't know, 1 million people, a whole bunch of people. They're out there in the desert. The Lord said, pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel in your hand, and take your staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb. Now, again,
right.
You can kind of tell by looking at this picture. But when you go there, there's a lot of rocks. When God says, go strike the rock at Horeb, Moses is like, the rock at Horeb? Like, you're going to need to be a little more specific. It's very clear that the Lord was referring to a prominent landmark, something that was well known by, it was called like, in order to stand out, if you're a rock in that area, you really need to stand out to become known as the rock at Horeb. Okay? That's the point.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that at the start. I was like, well, you're in a desert and there's mountains and sand. I'm sure there's a lot of rocks. So you got to be a pretty unique rock if you're going to be referred to inside of a desert as the rock of Horeb. And indeed, this is a very unique rock.
That was my point.
Yeah,
Behold, that's a reference to Pat. That was my joke. Does anybody remember that? If you have to tell someone it's a joke, you've already failed.
Yeah.
Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out, that the people may drink. And Moses did so. So here's this prominent landmark. Moses strikes it with a staff. Water gushes forth. It says in Isaiah 48, they did not thirst when he led them through the deserts. He made the water flow out of the rock for them. In Hebrew, the word is baka. He clave. He split the rock. Whatever this prominent landmark rock is, the Lord split it. And the water gushed forth enough so that 1 million plus people can drink. That's a lot of, as we say in Boston, a lot of water. Okay. Can you see me down at the bottom of the picture? This does not begin to communicate how big this thing is. The rock itself is
all right, cool. You see him, little guy right here. Too bad he didn't go up, but pretty much as much as I was showing you before, that just a tiny little circle, that would be him standing right there. Look how huge this is here. Side note, everything in the Old Testament is pointing to Christ. So 1 Corinthians 10:4, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. So that rock in the desert as well represents Christ. Let me see if I can just get. Yeah, it says, moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud and passed through the sea, and all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the spiritual meat, the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink. For they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with many of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Just an interesting side note.
Stories tall, 65 feet high. The hill that it's on is 100 feet tall. Now, again, I should have put in another picture, but the rock is split. You can go crawl right up through the middle of it. From the top to the bottom, it's split. I'm over at a little bit of an angle so you can't see clear through it. You can see the thing from like a mile away. It is a very unusual landmark. You think about it, I'm not a geologist. How does that form? How does that form? It's not like a different type of rock from the rock that it's on, like erosion and eventually this one crystal like that thing got stuck there at some point, precariously placed there by the Lord ultimately. Moses goes up there and strikes it. It splits. Now, again, I'm not a geologist, but is there any evidence that there was massive water gushing forth from it? People have shown me pictures of this over the years. And I'm just skeptical. I'm like, I don't know. It's interesting, but I'd have to see it myself. Here's a picture I took after I climbed up. I'm not a geologist. Does that look like massive water erosion to you?
Yep.
I'm looking at it, I'm going, duh. Like, yeah, it really looks like water was gushing forth out of this thing. And you stand there, it looks like you can see, the area that it ran down. I'm going,
smoothed out edges.
Crazy. But here's the thing, guys.
All smoothed out.
The rock, according to Paul, represents Christ, who was broken for us.
Do you understand? Like I had said, and we all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. So, okay, God striking and breaking the rock, okay, and from the rock being broken, water gushing out, okay, is again points to a spiritual truth to Christ as well. All right, we he says, I'll give you, he asked the Samaritan lady, like, if you would give me something to drink, I would give you also something to drink, and the water that I would give you would be a water that if you drink, you would never thirst again. So they're outside of a well, So Jesus is offering a spiritual water for a spiritual thirst, and he points that out. The symbolism is as a type of Christ. The rock represents that as well. The fulfillment is again in Christ, and Joel as well points that out.
It's crazy, but a lot of times, they'll take you up to this guardrail and they'll be like, see that street down there? That's the street where Jesus would have walked, if he had been here. Like, that's from that stuff is like 10 feet underground. It's been built upon. Or they'll go and they'll be like, this is where Paul did a miracle. This is not where God did a miracle. It's not where Moses did a miracle. The Lord took this thing, stuck it literally on a pedestal. It is the miracle. It is the miracle. It's not where a miracle happened. There it is. And he put it on a pedestal. He preserved it out in the middle of nowhere. And it represents Christ who was broken for us. And he's like, behold, and you're like, this is crazy. But it could just be a coincidence. It might be nothing, right? I want to be realistic. It might just be nothing. Are there any other reasons to believe this is the real Mount Sinai? This is the mountain the first time I saw it. I came up over this ridge, crossed that big dark valley, and that's the Mount Sinai in front. You can see the peak is the dark basalt rock. The rest of it's granite. And I'm just dumb Joel, I got my backpack. I'm with some friends. We're trying to avoid the locals because we don't want to get in trouble. I come across this valley, and I come upon this it's like an enclave. It's not really a cave. It's enough for a person to sleep in and not get wet. And there's this mural painted in there, this ancient mural. Here's some pictures. It's people shooting arrows, bows and arrows. And I get out my iPhone, and I'm like, doom-da-doom-da-doo. And I start taking pictures. I'm an archaeologist, doop-da-doop-da-doo. Like, I just got here. I just showed up. Again, I didn't even graduate from college, which is a great way to save money. And here's another picture of it now, just some close-up. Now, these type of paintings, and they fall, by the way, like biometric, this style of painting, they fall right in the window of the time of the Exodus. The only ones that still are there are the ones that are on the underside of the rocks. Stuff that got weathered eventually wore away. There's some other pictures you'll see of petroglyphs. They're actually chiseled through this layer of like algae, this dark algae on the rock, and so they remain. But the paintings are very rare. I just walked up to one randomly. The area is huge, huge. And it's you walk right by it 100 times and never see it. I walked right up to it, call my friends over, we take a bunch of pictures. There's some more. They're all shooting bows and arrows. And I texted to my wife. And strangely enough, out in the middle of nowhere, had great cell reception. Like out in the desert of Saudi Arabia, Sprint had way better reception than literally in front of the Sprint complex. So I text my wife and I'm like, check it out. I just discovered some ancient paintings. And she goes, it's exactly like in the book of Exodus. And I texted back and I said, what are you talking about, woman? I'm the Bible teacher here. You're watching the kids. And that's holy ground right there. That's like unholy ironic humor. So she goes, yeah, look at the back of Exodus, look at the end of Exodus 19, punk, son. And so I looked it up and I was like, holy mackerel. The Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready, because on the third day, again, this was the culmination, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. However, before he does that, put limits for the people around the mountain. So put a bunch of boundary markers and tell them, be very careful that you don't approach the mountain. Don't even touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. They are to be stoned or shot with arrows.
Stoned or shot with.
And I'm like, wow, that's another coincidence. Exactly what the Bible describes. You've got these boundary markers with pictures of archers, essentially the modern version of this property protected by Smith & Wesson, right? Those little signs. All the Democrats.
Yeah, like remember at the start when I was talking about what is the significance of Mount Horeb in the Bible, and it spoke about protecting the mountain with penalty. So if anyone even approaches the base and touches the base of the mountain, they should be killed. So we see here artwork of people and these rocks where you have these arrows are at the base of the mountain. So they were making paintings of arrows, people with bow and arrows, as a warning. This is the limit. Past this limit, you will be shot down with an arrow.
Let's have them. Just kidding. I told the first service, by the way, everyone's always talking like, look, it's getting crazy out there. You need good home protection. Everyone always talks about what is the best form of home protection. This gun, this, that. Don't you, the best form of home protection is a bow and arrow. Because you always do, and you hear people like, I didn't even know I got shot. I kept running down the street. I didn't even know I got shot. No one ever says that when they get hit with an arrow, ever. One arrow, you can have 8 people. The friends are all going to run. So you get yourself a bow and arrow, home protection, just kidding, in the middle of the night. Honey, I think I heard someone. You're going around the hallway. Let's just give me some yogurt. Okay, what else would we expect to find? That's free, by the way, that advice. That's solid advice. If it's the real Mount Sinai, well, Elijah went there. There needs to be a cave, right? Here's, right on the face of the mountain is this big cave. It's about 20 feet deep, smooth, sandy floor. You can easily sleep there. Elijah slept there. Here's a picture from inside the cave looking out, stepping back from the mountain a bit. You can kind of see it up there. You can kind of see the belly button on the mountain, and it's right on the front.
Yeah, so it's over here. Okay, and there's that mountain. And just to show you, even before we started, Joel, they talk about Elijah. Where is it? Of course, I won't find it now that I'm trying to find it. Moses instructs. Exodus. Wasn't it at the start? Yeah, here. Now entered. See this instruction. Anyways, before Exodus, while Moses was tending his flocks and his father-in-law Jethro, he came one day to the slopes of Mount Horeb. Sorry, I can't find it. I don't want to cause too much dead air time, but all that to say is that I had oh, here. That's where, well, I knew it was somewhere over here, guys, on the bottom. From Mount Horeb, the Israelites set out towards Kadesh Barnea, an 11-day journey. Much later, the prophet Elijah fled to Mount Horeb because of Jezebel's wrath. There he stayed in a cave and had an extraordinary encounter with God, who spoke to him not in the windstorm, earthquake, or fire, but in a gentle whisper. On Horeb, God also instructed Elijah to anoint Hazael as king. So just to say, the prophet Elijah here, the mountain, we're talking about that in Deuteronomy, and so this is where we're going to start accumulating all of these tiny coincidences. What a coincidence. And obviously it can't be true. The Bible's a fairy tale for grown-ups. So, this mountain that's in the proper location, that has proper cultural, historical context, meaning that it has always been acknowledged as being such. Just what, and you're going to see, he's going to start going like, oh, of course, he's being snarky about it. Of course it's a coincidence, but it's like coincidence. Yet, mainstream academic archaeology are very hesitant. There are Turkey archaeologists and stuff like that are working on the Noah Ark, exhibit kind of thing, like that excavation. But anyways, let's leave it at that. Yeah. When he's talking about the temple. So the temple layout, if you look at it, so you'll have the Holy of Holies, okay, the holy place, right? And then after you have the outer court, the court of the Gentiles. So it's made in layers. So the top of Mount Sinai would be the Holy of Holies. Then after you have, a second plane, because it kind of, there's a peak, then there's a plane, it goes down, there's a plane, and it's in a way, he makes a good point that it's kind of like the various chambers of the temple, where the peak would be the Holy of Holy place, the Holy of Holies, the most holy place. Okay. So you have the holy place, you have the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies. All right. You have the inner courts, you have the outer courts. Sorry about that. I was doing all this. So this would be the top of Mount Sinai, would be the most holy. And then after the holy place. And then after here, you have inside the temple courts, yada, yada, yada.
And in fact, in the story of Exodus, we read where the Lord calls up Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel after this covenant had been made between God and Israel, where he gave them the law, he gave them Torah. It was essentially, for what it's worth, a marriage covenant. He was calling them up on top of the mountain. They were going to have a marriage sealing feast. They were going to have the wedding supper, which is the prophetic precursor to the marriage supper of the Lamb. What started on Sinai is completed on Zion. It's a side note. So the Lord calls them up there. They're on top of the mountain, but Moses alone is allowed to go all the way up. So back to that. They're up there over the ridge that you're looking at. There's this, which is way lower, by the way. You go over that ridge. Moses went all the way up, and that's where Moses met God at the top. Now, here's another verse 24, chapter 24, verse 9 through 11. Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. So they're on the first tier, and under his feet was something. This is just amazing. Under his feet was something like a pavement of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But the miracle is God did not kill them. God did not raise his hand against them. And I love this statement. They saw God, and they ate and drank. They had a feast. They're looking up at the feet of God. The second time I went back, I went up over the ridge. And when I got up there, I was stunned. This is the site that I saw. There's a plateau up there. It's like a bowl. You go over the ridge, and there's this huge bowl, and you're looking up at the real Mount, at the peak of Mount Sinai. Now, that's a very wide angle for what it's worth. It makes the peak look small. Surrounding this bowl is a ridge. It's about 40 feet tall. It's like an amphitheater. It's huge. Here's, which is interesting too, so I'll throw this out. Now, when Joshua heard the sound of the people as they shouted, he came to Moses. So now you have the golden calf incident. In the middle of all of this stuff that's happening, the Lord's meeting with Moses. They're down there worshiping a cow god from Egypt. They're cheating on their bridegroom in the middle of the wedding.
Nice.
And Joshua's up there. He's at the bowl. He's at the plateau. He's with them. And he says, Moses, he goes, I hear the sound of war down in the camp. They can hear it, but they can't see it. Why? Because they're in the bowl. And he goes, it's not the sound of the cry of triumph. It's not the cry of defeat. I hear them singing. And suddenly it makes sense because you go there and you're like, yeah, you can't hear it. If it was any other mountain and you're just on the side of the mountain, you can look down. You can see what's going on. They couldn't see them, but they could hear them. Here's a closer picture of the mountain as you get close. That's so standing on the plateau, looking up to the peak, it's another few hour hike. It's a big, big mountain. Like it's a huge area. This is a picture at night. We camped up there on the plateau. The Milky Way was right. It was just beautiful. What else would we expect to find? Well, the Bible says in Exodus 24 that Moses built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and it's an altar that was made with uncut stones, right? And then the Lord said, and set up 12 stone pillars. They're standing stones. A better translation is...
So what are the chances that there's just by coincidence exactly what he just read there? It's just a coincidence, obviously.
Come forward. Put limits for the people around the mountain. So put a bunch of boundary markers and tell them, be very careful, be careful. Again, there's plenty of caves out there in the world. It's not the cry of defeat. I hear them singing. And suddenly it makes sense because you go there and you're like, yeah, you can't hear it. If it was any other mountain and you're just on the side.
Yeah, sorry. So he's quite high now on Mount Sinai, and it kind of goes, that plateau is actually more like a plateau, but a bowl. They're within there. They can't see, even though they're quite high on the mountain. They're towards the summit now. Well, we see the summit ahead. They can hear. They can hear at the camp down at the base where all of the Israelites nation is. They cannot see, so they're hearing some. Is it chanting? Is it battle cries? Is it music? They cannot visualize it from where they are, but it's echoing. They can hear it. They can hear that there's something happening.
The mountain, you can look down. You can see what's going on. They couldn't see them, but they could hear them. Here's a closer picture of the mountain. As you get close, that's so standing on the plateau, looking up to the peak, it's another few hour hike. It's a big mountain. Like, it's a huge area. This is a picture at night. We camped up there on the plateau. The Milky Way was right. It was just beautiful. What else would we expect to find? Well, the Bible says in Exodus 24 that Moses built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and it's an altar that was made with uncut stones, right? And then the Lord said, and set up 12 stone pillars. They're standing stones. A better translation is standing stones that represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Deuteronomy says that there's a river that comes down the mountain next to the altar. So if this is the real Mount Sinai, is there an altar with a river next to it? Right at the base of the mountain is about an 80-foot altar. Here's a picture of it from up above, from Elijah's.
The aerial view, you can see much better, and that's pretty cool. You can see it's like in an arrow shape kind of thing there. And over here, this is a dried up riverbed. You can see again the rounded stone. So there's a riverbed that laid here, and the river went there. So I'll let him explain it.
Cave looking down on it. Just to the right, you can see the dry riverbed. Exactly what the Bible describes. But if you guys believe this is real, it's because you're gullible. It's just another coincidence. Coincidence, 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 right? Now, the Saudis, back in the day, they didn't want a bunch of Americans sneaking in there, a bunch of crazy Americans, so they did an archaeological survey to prove it's not an altar. But what did they find? A layer of ash, charcoal, bones mixed with other organic materials. It's an altar where they're sacrificing bulls. They archaeologically found exactly what you would expect to find if it's where Moses was slaughtering all of the bulls. Oh, and by the way, also, it's made with uncut stones, exactly as the Bible says. And another coincidence, it's so weird, as Barbarino would say, that there's a bunch of pillars right next to it, exactly as the Bible describes. The coincidence.
If anybody's convinced that this is the actual site that the Bible is talking about, please write convinced or not convinced. Curious.
Here are just coincidentally very much stacking up. And then if it's the real Mount Sinai, you've got the whole story of the golden calf incident. Is there any evidence? A couple hundred yards from Moses' altar at the base of the mountain.
What a coincidence.
Looking down from Elijah's cave, you can see this big pile of rocks, and there just so happens to be a bunch of petroglyphs of cows. Another coincidence, which is exactly what the Bible describes. There's a whole bunch of them. It's about a dozen cows. Real quick, this is a picture from the tomb of Pharaoh Seti in Egypt, Valley of the Kings and all that.
So notice this calf idol. This person here is holding on the tail. Okay, so there's a person here and a person in front, both facing each other, hanging on the tail, and you will see specifically that this is how some of the calves are painted. So they are definitely making images of the gods that they knew while they were in Egypt. So this is an Egyptian god. Here is, God appearing before the nation of Israel for days on end. Moses striking, rocks and water gushing out. All of their needs being provided for them. Moses is up there, in the process of completing the covenant that God is going to make with their people. And what are they doing down at the base of it? The minute that, Dad leaves, Moses leaves, hey, let's get naked, start having an orgy with each other, and making golden idols of calves, just like we had in Egypt. And we may as well. So it's pretty incredible.
That It's a picture of worship of this cow, which they worship Hathor, Apis, and some different cows in Egypt. And the Israelites were affected by that. Here's a picture of that. Pay close attention. Notice the person looking underneath like he's bench pressing the cow.
This one.
It's not bench pressing the cow. It's a picture of worship. Notice the person at the back holding the tail. Now, the scholars who mock this say, yeah, it's an interesting coincidence. I got to give it to you that there's cows. But these are just pictures of cows grazing in the fields. These are pastoral scenes. There's nothing unusual about that. Here's one of the pictures of the cows. See the guy under it? Bench. Exactly what you see in Egypt. These are crude petroglyphs. They use rocks. They chisel through the...
Yeah, it's really crude, but you can definitely see them under the calf, and definitely the arms, just like the... this is probably the guy over here. But yeah, definitely somebody underneath, in a way, holding. It looks like it's holding up. But I guess that's their image, graven image of worship.
The algae. This is Egyptian religious iconography. The people who carved this, it was not pastoral scenes. They came from Egypt. It just so happens to be at the base of the mountain that has all of this other evidence that ancient Jewish tradition says the real Mount Sinai. Look at this one. I didn't notice this the first time. What do you see behind the cow? See the guy holding the tail? That's not how you walk a cow. It's exactly what you see in Egyptian religious iconography. There's a few of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
The next day, they rose early. They offered burnt offerings. They brought peace offerings. These are the golden calf idolaters. And it says they ate and drank and they rose up to play. The word play there has sexual connotations. There was a pagan party. We already learned that they were singing. Okay, so the word there in Hebrew means there was some type of like pagan worship orgy thing happening. So here's one of the murals of all of the cows, and I'll just do this one real quick. I didn't notice this the first time. It's not the type of thing I usually tend to notice. As I was looking at it, I went, hey, every single one of the men in this picture are very excited to be here.
They are very happy.
Every one of them. This is not your average guy's hunting trip or like whatever, okay? It's exactly what the Bible describes was happening, right? Finally, I'm going to end it here and call Wes on out. It came about as Moses comes down the mountain, he comes near the camp, he saw the calf, and he saw the dancing. They're singing, they're dancing, they're engaged in pagan revelry. Are there any murals that portray exactly what the Bible describes? Here's another one of the murals. What do they look like they're doing? They're boogieing.
Yeah.
That's how, in Hebrew,
That's
petroglyph, that means boogieing.
All right, so that's pretty much it for the presentation. Just gonna take down all of these tabs. I'm going to invite anybody who wants to talk about this subject onto the stream at this time. So if you've never done this, it's quite simple. Press the link in the chat and I will help you with the rest. You press the link. By pressing the link, you'll pop up on my platform here, and it's called the Back Studio. And from there, I can click and pop you up, and we can, in a way, it's just like FaceTime. You can do this on your phone. When you do click, before me letting you on, there'll be an option of turning off the camera. If you don't feel like having your face shown, it'll just show whatever your default avatar is. Yep. All right, guys. Now's the time to not be shy. His Highness, I saw popped in at one point. Thanks for all the well thought out comments, Bill. Bill, especially if you're interested in coming on, please click the link in the comment section. And I'd like to listen a little bit to some of your opinions on things, since you've been really interacting well in the comments, and it's greatly appreciated. To me, I don't think any problem if you have Windows. I know I've popped on just pressing it on the phone even. I'm just watching a live stream. I click it and everything's on the phone. I have to get going, but thank you, Jason, for your hospitality. I really enjoyed it. Oh, well, thank you. My pleasure, guys. I'm going to stay on maybe another few minutes and to see if anybody is interested. And if not, we're going to call it a night. An hour and a half. That's pretty good for a stream. I will be getting back to doing my daily bread readings. If you let me just share screen here. I'm going to be getting back to it. It might not be every day I'll be able to do it. It might have to be occurring at night in the evening, Eastern time. Some work stuff that's switched around, so the hours I was doing before are a little bit different. So anyways, it does go on for longer. I just wanted to show you the meat of the subject kind of thing. Yeah, this is Ron Wyatt's. This is a really long one. Does multiple ones. Does Noah's Ark, the Real Mount Sinai, I believe also. He's legit, man. When it comes to archaeologically finding stuff, he was like, you know, the boots on the ground. Very, very good research, in my opinion. It's another interesting one that maybe it's worth it. This is the Mount Sinai one. So we can do another one and just watch this section and then watch this section, Noah's Ark. The blood of Christ on the Ark of the Covenant, plausible. I think highly plausible. That's where I am on that one. And we got Bill Bailey. Hey, Bill, how are you, man? Nice to see you. I appreciated your comments.
Pretty good. Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, no, I was listening to some of the comments that you're saying. So you seem pretty well learned and stuff like that on this subject. So, what are your thoughts on like specifically the Sinai location? Any thoughts on that? Turn off the whatever stream volume you were listening to.
I'm just going to turn off the power off of this thing.
Okay, good. There's no that way. There's no feedback. Yeah. So what's your thoughts? Let's like maybe just start with Mount Sinai.
Bear with me. Okay, we're back. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Sorry, can you hear me? You can.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So your name is Joel, is it?
Jason.
Jason, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, it's Jay.
Well, I can hear you fine through these, and you can hear me. That's great. Okay. Well, I'll just give you a bit of background about myself. I've been doing this for about 41 years now. I run a YouTube channel, as you've probably already seen. You might have just checked that out. I've been tracking many areas of prophecy, history. I also have a bit of a technical background in computer science and medical background as well. So between those things, I've been able to check out and understand a lot of what's going on in the world. So I keep an eye on the world prophetically to find out what's going on in the news.
What's your medical background? Just I work in healthcare, so I was just curious.
You work in healthcare. I did mostly providing computer systems to people, but I also got involved in various areas of biology. Genetics is my background.
Okay.
So I've been studying that for quite some time.
Wow. Okay,
so
go ahead.
Above that, I've been looking at various areas, which includes obviously what's been going on around the world in terms of archaeology and stuff like that. So, so I have been looking at the Wyatt stuff for quite a long time. So I've got links into Duprinar and what's going on there, which is where the Noah's Ark area is. That area's got as far as making scans down to about 30 meters, as far as I know. They've been able to map out quite a bit. And they're really struggling for funding now just to try to get into that and go a little bit deeper. You probably have heard about the David Fassold journey over to the US there, where they started to look at the various aspects of what they've been doing in terms of the artifacts and what they've been doing with those, how they've been interpreted. And to be fair, the guy that looked at that, guy called Lawrence, didn't really go on site, didn't really look at the area that much at all. He just did a casual glance at the mineralogy and concluded that it was volcanic, which we already knew anyway, because the wood has been replaced by the mineral deposits. So in terms of the other area, which of course is of interest to me, is looking at the crossing of the Red Sea, which for many years was thought to be Catherine's monastery, of course, which it no longer is. I think there's very few people in the world now that will say that it is, on the grounds that not even so much as the Bible's been found there, never mind in the artifacts, whereas where the other places we're looking at quite a lot of information.
Is it is it where those two pillars were erected?
Yeah, there was one on the Egyptian side, as you're aware of. That's been re-erected, and the other one is on the Saudi side, which was taken away to a museum.
Yeah.
They lifted that almost immediately. Now you have to bear in mind that the area that Ron White went into is an area of special interest because it's where the Saudis keep their nuclear facilities. So when they went over there, they thought, are you an American spy? And one thing led to another, and before you knew it, he ended up in prison for quite a long time until he could explain, hey, I'm just a guy that works in a hospital and this is my hobby. And then he was able to get released there and move back across to the US. He worked at Nashville, I believe, or did, until about the 1990s.
Yeah, no, I was blown away. And that's why I wanted to share it with Mike, a little tiny community. Because Christians themselves are not even aware of this. People don't really speak about it, and it's such a blessing because it's like, I was not a believer until maybe, was it 2019 and stuff like that. So for me, having known all of this, having had this presented by other Christians, would have made me scratch my head big time. Because I most people are so far removed as to say, like, well, we're talking about fairy tales, we're talking about mythologies and legends, and maybe they have some spiritual, truths to them. And this is what people push. And as you're, many believers have to go through this dross, of going through this. And so that's why more Christians really have to share this, even you don't have to claim absolutes, even though I think I'm thoroughly convinced on certain of the sites, but to present it open-mindedly, and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to check into your content, and what we could do is if you have I don't know how big your channel is, but
pretty small.
Okay, good. So, if you're interested in working and collaborating, if you have something cool that you've presented perhaps on your channel that you want to come and present on my channel, PowerPoint presentation, slides, whatever, that would be great. We could go down that route and stuff and collaborate. Just throwing that out there.
Thanks very much. My area predominantly is obviously, with the background I've already got, is I've also looked into apologetics in history as well. So as you said, the channel is predominantly a spiritual armory. That's what I designed it as. Most people design YouTube around themselves. I did the exact opposite. Mine's a them tube, and what I've done is it's very difficult to censor something that isn't yours. So I have been able to bring in a lot of information from around the world through a lot of study. I would say about 95% of everything you see in there, I've seen that personally, so I know what's in there and I know what it relates to. I did studies on the Bible a long time ago, and I know I've written stuff on that, including evolution as well. So I pretty well know the lowdown in terms of where people are coming from, what they believe in and why they believe it. And a lot of it is presupposition. It's based on these things can't be true, this information doesn't qualify, and so on and so forth. However, what you're looking at here is there's an awful lot of information that they completely discount for no other reason than there's a miracle in it. If we were talking about Jesus and he was just a first century preacher, he was a nobody really, but he said some really cool things and people agreed with him, And we brought that information up and said, well, do you know there's 5,500 manuscripts of that guy. There's 135,000 quotes from over 15 different sources.
Yeah.
The Romans knew about him. The Greeks knew about him. The Chinese knew about him.
Okay.
Everyone would say, great, what a great guy. Yeah, we should really listen to what this guy says. But the second this guy does a miracle or rises from the dead, now they don't want to know, because it's the wrong message, it's the wrong narrative. But there is an awful lot of background information about Jesus that makes it pretty hard to dismiss him, even as a person. But ultimately, his claims to be God are pretty well substantiated, both in history and in the forensic evidence as well, which you will also find on my channel.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely. Please, Darla, send a link to his channel again. And before we go, if I can click on the link, I can pop up your channel too there for 100%. I'll pop it up so that
Okay.
Yeah, you might get like a 20 subscribers new.
Yeah.
Probably over the next months or so, if you're hanging around and stuff like that. I usually have about 20, on average, 8 people show up. There was like
16 today, broke the record.
6, a handful of new subscribers. I think you will, and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely. So let's try and focus on archaeology.
Archaeology, okay.
This one, because I when you were talking about the resurrection, then I wanted to jump on to a bit briefly. What are your thoughts on the Shroud of Turin? The Sudarium of Oviedo. There's another one that predates the Shroud. I think it was a folded cloth, which people think is actually the cloth, the Shroud.
No, it's actually not quite right. It's the Sudarium itself is the cloth that's folded into 3 to 4 parts.
Well, there's the Sudarium, the one that's like
that's the
kind of thing.
They call it a face cloth. Yeah,
that's it. There's that one. There's the Shroud of Turin, but then there was this relic that they spoke about well before, and it was like holding an image of him, and they didn't call it the Shroud of Turin, but you could see that it was them carrying around the shroud with the image of the face. And I could try and look it up. There's the Shroud of Oviedo, there's the Shroud of Turin, and then there's the face of something. I'd have to look into it, but let's just stick to the Shroud of Turin then.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on that? Are you skeptic or?
No, I'm pretty versed on this stuff. Again, you'll find links in any of my folders. There are descriptions within and links within the descriptions. I usually find as Christians, when you tend to put links out or try to, you can see it, but nobody else can. It's a very clever YouTube censorship chip.
What's your channel?
At Voice of Reason 162. Put the @ sign in front.
At
Voice of Reason. Well, one word.
Reason.
162. And there I am.
I'm gonna. Guess we'll have that popped up right now.
Okay.
At Voice of
Reason 162.
Sorry, it's because I didn't put
the @ in front. Yeah, people forget that.
162.
162. Yes. All one word. No spaces.
Yeah, that's the problem. I just
3 or 4 people always have trouble finding me.
I'll find it eventually.
You could also go on your if you do a search for at Voice of Reason 162, all one word, you'll find it. Do a search. Yeah. I'll wait.
Yep. Unable to put a link in the chat. I'll share screen what I'm trying to do here. Did you have one already put in? Did somebody put your?
Yeah, they did. They've already put it into the.
Carla, can you put it again? Here at Voice of Reason. Good, thank you. While I'm fiddling around, feel free to tell me what you think about the Shroud of
Okay.
Turin.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
just feel free to talk.
right, there are two articles. The history of both of them are known quite well. The Sudarium is better known than the actual Shroud of Turin because they know where it went and which kings had it from the very early on, which is tracked back to the 3rd century AD. So it has a chain of custody with any evidence, internal or external. You're always looking at a chain of custody, and that is fairly well established right up to the present day. There are quite a few points of congruence, i.e., if you were to take the cloth and wrap it at a position of 62, believe it's 62 degrees or about 20 degrees over, and then match that up to the head positioning of the Shroud of Turin, there are about 60 points of congruence in that.
Okay.
Firm ones, up to 103. So when you look at all of those points of congruence between the 2 points, then you conclude that the two of them did come into contact with each other at some point.
Yeah.
That evidence is that shows that the two items must have been in direct contact with each other at least as early as the 3rd century.
Yeah.
That's it. You're nearly there.
Sorry. Is it voice?
No, at
It's
voice
really
of
weird.
reason. Right. Just back that up a little bit. It's got dot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you mistyped it several times.
At voice.
VOIC of OF. Voice of reason, REASON 162, all one word. 162, and hit the enter key.
Stupid.
There I am.
Oh, Bill. Subscribe. Okay, I am subscribed. Let's pop this up here. So while you're talking,
if you go to my forensics folder
in your playlist,
in my playlists.
All right. So just go to created playlists, I guess, or here.
No. Up top of the screen there where it says playlists.
Yep.
Yeah.
List. Okay, created playlists.
Yeah, that's it. And
bottom
yeah, there's a lot of them in there. There's over 150.
Okay.
So if you were to find one in there called Voice of Reason, if you open that up and find it, I find it's actually.
Do you know how many months back? There's the image of the beast. Tell me to scroll down if.
Yeah, keep going. Eventually, you'll get to. It's going to be way down the list.
Should I go down and then scroll up, or you tell me? I'll just keep on scrolling there. Yeah.
Eventually, you'll get to forensic evidence. Like I said, it's a bit difficult because I don't normally see it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here. Oh no, Jesus forensics.
You go. Blood. That's it. Go into that.
Do you follow cold case Christianity guy ever?
I do indeed. Yes.
A few days ago, it was announced that a shred.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of stuff in there.
Okay. So
now if you go into the description on that list.
Up here?
Yeah, there should be a description.
Yeah, here.
And all of the additional links and stuff are in there, and you can follow those. I usually find it's easiest on a tablet because here all you see is the visuals, where on a tablet you can see the actual links and you go straight to them. So I've made that point.
Did you want to talk about the carbon date?
Carbon
dating that was done.
Okay.
Medieval carbon dating.
All right.
Why was that wrong?
It is wrong, but now we know why it's wrong. So in a nutshell, okay, so we know there's at least 60 to 103 points of congruence between the two. We know, therefore, the two must have been in contact with each other at least in the 3rd century AD. However, there's mention even going back to the Gospels of the Shroud of Turin, and it's in Galatians. There's a specific Greek word in there which actually is translated cloak, which is incorrect. In the actual Greek, it's shining garment. So it's a garment that actually gave off a glow at the time of writing. So I can imagine when Paul said, I betrayed Christ before you was crucified. What he's saying is, I showed you Christ crucified. That's what it actually says in the Greek. Not just, I told you, I actually portrayed this, I showed you. You've seen it with your own eyes, Christ crucified. So we know it was in Galatians. Galatians was written approximately 58 AD, well within the lifetime of Paul, so he must have had the garment then. Yeah. If the garment was around in 58 AD, so was the Sidarium, because the two have got congruency matches up until that time. Now, we know there's been a big hoo-ha in the past about the dating, where they dated it from 1280 up to 1360, I believe. There were 4 centers, and the dating as done was actually correct. So there's no argument that the dating was right. But the material used was contaminated with cotton built into that piece of cloth, which was taken from a corner, by the way.
On top of it, then after they gave from the 3, I think it initially wasn't supposed to be
4.
like 7. It was supposed to be 7. All of a sudden, for some reason, it was 3. And what they did is, when they finally said it's between here, this date, and that date, you don't take 3 samples and just put a middle. Well, this one is from at this extreme. This is the earliest. This one's the latest. So it's like, wow, really? You have thousands. Anyways.
Anyway, the stirp director was a guy called Roy Rogers, who you'll be aware of. He was in charge of the 1978 view. They were there, basically all they had was a couple of days to look at this, so they were working around the clock. They were not directly involved, and they disavowed the information that was presented at the time. They said, hey, we didn't agree to this. We didn't agree the area that you took it from. And what they did was Roy kept a piece of that back, and it would have died there in terms of the dating thing that was done. However, 2 people came along much later, and they looked at the evidence again and went, just a minute, there's cotton in this. Where'd the cotton come from? The cotton's a modern repair, and therefore that would have dated from the 1st to the 2nd century through to the 15th or 16th. When you split the difference, it works out about right relative to the amount of cotton. So there are 4 samples that were sent to 3 universities, and they were all tested out there, and they found that the proportion of cotton determined the higher ages, and where there was less cotton, it was a lower age. So Ray, being the kind of guy, he said, well, I can blow that out of the water. I've got the parts of these original samples. He put them under the microscope. Below me, he found mixed cotton in them. So he knew then. He wrote a paper, and he said, I've come pretty close to establishing that this is the historical Christ that is on this shroud. And the information he put out there basically debunked that.
Do you have, because I've done PowerPoint presentations on the Shroud of Turin before, in some of my I did it twice, I think. I redid it.
Right.
I want to add on the evidence. Like I need to find the sources, because I don't want to just be talking in the presentation. I show, like, no, this, let's say on Google, PubMed, Scholar, whatever you can find. This is the publication, the peer-reviewed publication of the debunking. That's not really a good word to use there scientifically, but refuting the carbon dating. Do you know? Like, is there an actual source that has been published that I can find?
Yes, there is. And you can go to Barry Schwartz should be able to provide a copy of that as well. Again, the link to the Shroud, I think it's www.shroud.com, is actually again in the description. And you can source it from there, and you can download it as a PDF. The paper is about 7 pages long, and I believe I've got a copy of it on my tablet, but not on the main computer here.
Yeah, that's fine.
This is my writing computer.
I just put I want to make sure my Gmail. If you just put it down and maybe send me a hello or something, because I'd like to maybe do a presentation, or we could collaborate together,
sure.
Or some of the stuff like that, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to get out there, like I said, for Christians. I don't want to go too long. We'll give it another 5 minutes, Bill. I don't want to go off track too much, because I want to keep it about the Rock of Horeb and Mount Sinai. But offline, we can definitely, from the Gmail, I can give you my Messenger or something like that. So
Okay.
we can text on Messenger, hey, do you want to do a stream tonight? Kind of thing. I'm a bit of a last minute kind of guy, like just all of a sudden the last one, like, hey, do you want to go on in an hour or something? And I am trying as well to build a community and stuff like that. It's funny. It's like you said, mine's called Jason John Swartz. It used to be like Fast Keep Crying because I was dieting and fasting. And then I tried to do Age of Deception, but you could not find it with that title. There's too many Age of Deception, million view kind of videos. So I couldn't even do my Jason Swartz. So for me, I didn't plan on making it a Christian channel. I planned on just having my name so I can do a wide variety, which I still go off track. I still, touch on all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it has ended up being more and more predominantly unplanned, just happening to be a lot more Christian content and stuff like that. It is what it is. But I'd like to build like a small community and eventually have panels because we can all start jumping on each other's platforms, having 5-10 Christians chatting away on stuff, and it's successful in other places. So that's
well, you're a bit privileged because I don't normally do face-to-faces. This is my first on YouTube. I've done I've done conferences before. This is my first rodeo. So,
well, it'll build your channel depending on what you want to do. Me, it's for fun. I'm not expecting ever to make a career of this.
Well, my primary purpose behind my channel was actually not to make myself famous. I'm trying to make Jesus famous, but at the same time, I was doing research into various stuff, and this was about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And the more I looked, I thought, that looks awfully like end times stuff.
Yeah.
So I started to widen further and further, and before I knew it, I had 9 subscribers. I'm thinking, where'd they come from? Because I wasn't trying to get them, and as you can tell from my channel, there's no videos there.
Yeah.
It's a research channel, and it's very simple. It's developed into what I call a spiritual armory, because there may be soldiers on the wall, there may be watchmen on the wall, but what any good watchman needs is weapons, and the right kind of defense, and the right kind of tools to view with and to see what's coming. So my channel does exactly that. It allows watchmen and watchwomen from around the world to tap into what I have, look at that, and they can reuse it. So there's no charge for using that information. You can go in there. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of links. It'll take you in 1,000 different directions, including, by the way, to the Shroud of.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you're interested in doing, let's say, like you said, you do PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. There's something that I'm using currently right now. It's called StreamYard. So you go to StreamYards. For some reason, once you go there, you make an account. It already knows your YouTube. There's no setting up, and it's literally like you go StreamYard. Okay. Create. Oh, there's my YouTube. Click it. Put in a title. Start live streaming. All of a sudden, you're live streaming on your YouTube. The platform's really simple. You can FaceTime with as many people as you want, and you can present screen. So you can arrive your research. You're like, look, I want to get it presentation done. I want it documented somewhere. You go in StreamYards, go live, do your PowerPoint screen share presentation. Boom. You can put it private if you want. You can put it public. And people, while you're live, people show up. You get way more views. If I do a video that I post, it's I might get 25 views, but when I get a live stream, I get 80 views and stuff like that. So people are prone to it goes like in the algorithm and stuff like that. All that to say is
it's an option.
If you're interested in research, if you're interested in getting your research out there, and if you're interested in networking, you will grow by using StreamYard. I'm saying StreamYard because that's what I use. Being able to have live conversations with other people, network, other sites that are doing all of this stuff. It is the way, and StreamYard is free. So I pay because I guess the free version of StreamYards allows you a certain amount of hours of streaming per month, and then you just have to wait for it starts over. If you want to infinitely stream, hundreds of hours and not be limited, I don't even
spend most of my day writing, actually.
Well, anyways, it's definitely, I feel honored. I'm very grateful that you took the chance of coming on for the first time. You're 100% invited for future. I'd love to collaborate with you, whether on your side or my side. And StreamYards will really help get you out there. And it's an idiot proof, present screen. And
Perfect.
So why don't we cut it here? It's exactly 2 hours into it. And please send me a hi on my Gmail. I'll give you, do you work through Messenger? If you're comfortable, or we can just go through email first. That's fine. And we can figure out.
Did you say you'd send me an email somewhere, or?
You want me to write it down again? Here.
Yeah, I can't see anything. I can't even see a private chat, anything.
If you go, well, here, can I just give it to you and you can write it down?
Yeah, sure.
It's
I'll just get up a notepad. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's JJ.
Yeah.
SWARTZ. 79.
Yeah.
At gmail.com.
Gmail.com.
Yeah, say, hey, it's me, Bill. And I'll have you on there.
JJ. Okay, fair enough.
All right, then, man. So
I'll definitely drop you a Gmail, and then you'll get and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and if there's anybody else that that's kind of interested in tagging along, feel free to invite them over here too.
I have somebody in mind, actually. A guy called David Hines. He's a guy that you would really like to talk to.
Well, it's like I like sharing my faith, but I would much rather have interesting people come on and just be a host to give them the platform too. And so that was my main plan. Isn't just to always have my big mouth going. So
that's okay. Well, the guy I have in mind, he also got his own channel. You might want to look him up.
What is it?
It's called, let's see now, check out my head.
I'll never find
it. It's not called David Hines, by the way. That's just his name.
Yeah.
It's just one of those blank moments. Very late here in the UK right now.
It's okay. We won't waste time.
I'll email you.
Yeah. All right, guy. So
okay.
See you soon, man. All right.
Very first meeting. Nice channel, and more collaborating, I think, in the future.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm happy I did this stream. All right. See you soon.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much. See you, bud.
All right. Cool, man. So we got Bill Bailey. And if you scroll up, you're going to see a link to his channel. And I encourage you to go look at his research, and hopefully he'll start playing around with StreamYards a little bit, and you'll be able to do something with that. Yeah, I was going to show StreamYards, but I'll just cut it now. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, Bill, for showing up. And à la prochaine.